안녕하세요, 안녕하세요, hey you, it's Natalia, and welcome back to the channel. It's best to encourage you to believe in your abilities to learn Korean. So on Instagram, I asked you guys for some language-related questions because I haven't done a Q&A in maybe like a year. I don't really know, but it's been a long time. So let's hurry up and jump into your questions. Go, go. Question number 1. How did you get over beginner's Korean to feel confident enough to say you're intermediate? So, I felt comfortable saying that I was intermediate once I was able to use intermediate level grammar structures and vocabulary. So back when I first started learning Korean, I self-studied for 2 months, and then I flew to Korea for a study abroad program, and there I took a placement test that put me in an intermediate level Korean class. And so as the semester went by, I guess you could say, I felt comfortable using the grammar structures they were teaching me and the vocabulary they were teaching me. And so once I was able to really use what I was being taught in that intermediate class, I was like, yeah, I feel comfortable saying that I'm an intermediate learner now because I'm actually using what I'm being taught in this class. Our next question is from my friend Danae. Hey girl, hey. Also, you guys should check out her Chinese study group. It's super cute, so yes. But Danae asked, what are some things that you liked and didn't like about Korea? So technically this isn't a language question, but I get asked this a lot, so we're gonna answer it anyway. So things that I liked, we're gonna do this as a lightning round. Things that I liked: super cute clothes, really like dainty jewelry. Like, I love these earrings. I got these in Korea, yep. I like that I can find like little cute characters everywhere, like all the plushies, all these plushies, Korea. And like stationery, super cute. I like the food, it's really good. Everything is like super convenient. The nightlife is amazing because I am actually a night owl, so I like that all the cafes are open like really late, and if they're not open really late, they're just always open, like 24 hours kind of open. So love that. Things I did not like, the fact that you can't try on shirts because they're scared you're gonna get your makeup on it. So you buy shirts in Korea not knowing if they're actually gonna fit, and then that can be a problem because a lot of stores are like final sale stores. Like if you're buying things like on that Hongdae strip or something, they'll tell you like, this is a final sale, so if it doesn't fit, too bad. I don't like that. The restrooms are like either really cold, like in the winter they're really cold, and in the summer they're really hot, so either you're freezing your butt off or you're just sweating bullets while trying to go to the restroom because there's just no AC or heating in that part of the restaurant or the building or whatever. So I guess I'm just really American and I don't like that. Something else I don't like: men spitting on the sidewalk. Like old men, they just go and watch where you step. Watch where you step. Danae also asked Chinese versus Korean ? So girl, I'm gonna assume you just want me to like compare the two languages. I guess that's what you mean. But if you guys didn't know, I studied Chinese rather diligently for 4 years before starting to learn Korean, and for Korean it's now been 4.5 years, so that's where these comparisons are gonna be coming from. So for starters, in Chinese you don't have to conjugate anything, which is beautiful. I love that. I love that, and I miss it so much. When I first started learning Korean, I was actually high-key mad that I had to learn conjugations because I was like, what is this, Spanish? Like I was not happy about it because I'd been learning Chinese for so long and it didn't make sense to me. Like, why would you have conjugations? Like, I know we do it in English or in Spanish, but like, come on, Korean. Yeah, another thing is like Korean has spaces unlike Chinese, which another thing that like annoyed me when I started learning Korean. I was like, why do you have spaces? That's such a waste of space. So and now I look back and I'm like, why was I complaining? Now I know where the word starts and stops. But yeah, so in Korean there's also an alphabet, so it's really easy to look up words or know how a word is pronounced just based on, you know, saying it, as opposed to Chinese, where you have to like draw it out and then put it in the dictionary to figure out not only what it means but also how to pronounce it. And in terms of like speaking about pronunciation, Chinese has 4 tones or 5 tones if you want to count like the neutral tone or the no tone, and then Korean is just like toneless. Yay. Another difference is the Chinese grammar, at least in my opinion, is very simple and kind of similar to English, like in terms of like the main structure, as opposed to Korean where like all the verbs and adjectives come at the end, and it's like I don't know, I feel like everything's backward. If you're a native English speaker, it's like, what is this? I'm doing a lot of dancing for this response. But yeah, there's that. Another difference that stuck out to me when I first started learning is like Korean, there's no question marking particle as opposed to Chinese, which has ma at the end, or like Japanese, which we're not talking about Japanese, but like in Japanese there's ka, right? So in Korean it was like either there's a question word like why, when, how, or there's an inflection at the end and they go what at the end. So yeah, those are some comparisons for you tonight. If you want to know more, hit me up. What tips would you give someone who is self-studying a new language? Okay, so in the beginning, I think it's most important that you do a lot of listening. You're not really listening to understand. It's more of listening to hear the patterns that are going on, to get your brain used to the language, right? So pick up where words are starting and stopping, what inflection the speakers have, kind of like when they breathe. I know that sounds really weird, but like now that I'm further along in Korean, I'm trying to figure out where people breathe sometimes. So just do a lot of listening just to like, I guess, just drench your brain in the language. The second tip I would give is to make some kind of like study routine or like plan of some sort. So as a beginner, I think it's really important that you're either studying every day or every other day, because you need to really just keep it fresh on your mind because it's so new. I did that with literally all my languages that I've ever studied. So Spanish, I was doing that, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, all of those, I was either studying it every day or every other day. The only language that I didn't do that with was German, and it shows. It shows. And that brings us to our next question. How are you doing with German? So German is a language that I dabble in when I am bored of Korean or I just want something that is different. So it's like that really fancy, beautiful cafe that you have to drive 30 minutes to get to, and you really only go like when you're bored of your local cafe, you're just tired of seeing the same scene. Which in this metaphor, that would be Korean. When I get tired of Korean, I go and learn some German. So I wouldn't say that I'm actually learning German or that I'm like fully studying German. It's kind of like I said, it's that language that I go to when I need something new and different. And with that question, we have a question asking, when will you start studying Japanese again? So like German, Japanese is a language that I dabble in for fun. It's not really a language that I have like high aspirations for. Honestly, if I were to get to intermediate in Japanese, I would be surprised. Like, I'm not working for any level of fluency in German or any level of fluency in Japanese. I just do them for fun and just because I'm curious. Now back in May, I did take some Japanese classes on italki simply because that was the month that I told myself I was not allowed to study Korean because my topic had gotten canceled and my brain was kind of like tired of learning Korean. So I was like, hey, let's do some dabbling in Japanese and see how much we remember and if we can learn anything new. So again, it's just like that random thing that I do for fun that I'm not actually good at. And now that I'm preparing to take the topic again, which hopefully doesn't get canceled, I don't really have time to be learning German or Japanese because I'm like focusing so much on Korean. And then even once the topic is like over and done with, I want to switch to business Korean because I want to go get my master's over there. So I don't really anticipate having like real time to study either of those in the next like 3-4 years. What advice do you have for someone who is learning a language after taking a long break? So I think it really depends on what level you had obtained in the language before your break and what you mean by long break. Are we talking like you haven't studied in like 3 weeks, or are we talking like it's been 7 years? Because I think the answer would be very different depending on what your situation is. For example, you started learning Korean and then maybe you got to like talk to me in Korean level 3 and you know like 200 words, but then you took a break of like 8 months. Let's say that. You took a break of like 8 months. You're probably like a false beginner now, which basically just means you have to start from the beginning, but you're gonna learn it very quickly and it's all gonna start like coming back to you very quickly because you're not a true beginner. It's not that you don't know anything, it's just that like you forgot and you need to go back and review. So in that case, if that's like similar to your case, I would just start from the beginning and just work your way through it. It'll go a lot faster than the first time. If you are someone who reached an intermediate level in the language and then you took a break of like 4 years, let's say. Like me, like with my Chinese, I was around an intermediate level before I stopped studying, and now it's been 5 years and I've not studied Chinese since. If I were to go back, I would go and I'd start with vocabulary, honestly, because I can still understand a lot of Chinese, I can still read Chinese, but I struggle to like speak Chinese, and I struggle to write the characters down. So I would start with, if it was me and if I was going back to learn Chinese, I would start with vocabulary first, and then I would start looking through my textbooks, just like noting anything that I might have forgot, not really taking notes, just like reading it. And then once I get closer to like the upper beginner, maybe like lower intermediate stuff, then I would start being like, okay, let's go back to like study, because now it's all come back. And I don't know if my interview with Steve Kaufman has come out by the time this video comes out, but in that video, he literally says to me about Chinese, saying like, don't worry about the fact that you took a break. Once you've gotten to a certain level in the language, like it just kind of, he used the word gestates. It gestates in your brain and it's there. It's kind of just like you locked it in the basement, or it's your teenager that's like grounded in her room and refuses to come out and talk to the family. Like they're there. You just have to like go like, hey, you wanna hang? You know, hey, you gotta go be like Anna in Frozen and be like, sister, come out and play. And then when sister comes out and play, like, it's there. It's just, she's hiding. Also, guys, please don't slide into my DMs or leave comments asking for resources for learning Chinese or tips on learning Chinese. It's been a long time since I've studied the language, and honestly, I'm not a reliable source anymore about that, so please don't ask me. I don't know. Cool. Our next question asks, what is the most challenging language? So I assume you mean the languages that I've studied, like what is the most challenging among those, as I cannot speak for all the languages that I have not studied, which would be a lot. So yeah, out of the languages that I have studied or spent time studying, I would say the hardest one is German. Not necessarily because German is hard, but because I never actually dedicate the amount of time that is needed to learn the language to it, if that makes sense. Like I'm always like, I spend like an hour learning German and then I don't talk to it again for like 6 months. It's yeah, that's why it's the hardest, because I just never actually put in the work. How to go to Seoul? I don't really know what you mean by that, because that's such a broad question, so I'm gonna give you a very broad answer. Save money, buy a plane ticket. No, but seriously, like if you want to go to Korea, you need to make a plan of how you're gonna get there. For me, when I was planning out how I was gonna do that month-long that month-long graduation trip that you guys like see Korea vlogs from all the time, I literally made a spreadsheet and I wrote down how much I anticipated the airfare was gonna be. I anticipated how much the Airbnb was gonna cost me for those 3 weeks that I was gonna need to stay in an Airbnb. I determined how much meals and souvenirs and how much money I was gonna spend on like BT21 stuff. Like I literally planned for everything to determine how much that trip was gonna cost. Then I did the math to determine how many hours I needed to put in at my retail job to be able to afford that trip. And that's what I did. Literally the summer before I graduated, I was putting in as close to 40 hours a week as I possibly could. And then my last semester at university, I was doing between 20 and 30 hours a week at my job so that I could afford it. If you really want to go, make a plan and then follow it. That's my advice to you. And while we're on the topic of going on trips, especially long trips, someone asked, how do you study while on a long trip? So personally, I don't ever study when on trips because they're vacation to me. Not that I don't like studying, I do like studying, but it's vacation, bro. But if I was gonna study, I would download some audio courses, probably from Talk to Me in Korean because they have a lot of them. And then maybe like a video course that I can watch on my phone while on the plane or on a tablet while on a long train ride. And then I would, like, if I really wanted to study, I'd probably download or like purchase an ebook version of my textbook so that I can, you know, work through it as I'm on this trip. But yeah, that's probably the extent of what I would do, because again, like, to me, vacation is vacation. Our next question is from Lydia asking, when's the next video in all Korean or any of the languages you're learning? So I don't really make videos in full Korean simply because I hate writing subtitles because they take so long. I will literally spend an hour writing subtitles for like a minute worth of video, which I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of time. So I think the next time I upload a video that's in full Korean will probably be when I want to like document my current level compared to like once I start studying in Korea, assuming that I like actually get accepted to that master's program. And if it happens before then, it's gonna be because you guys asked me for it so much that like I literally couldn't ignore you anymore. Like I literally couldn't pretend that I never saw that comment. So TBD, that's the answer that I would like to give. Next time I make a full video in Korean is TBD. What app do you use to study with your friends? So I assume you're referring to the random study sessions that I post about on Instagram. So for that, I use Google Meet because it's free and extremely easy to use. It literally, I just send a link to the people that are going to be in the video call and they click it and it opens up in their browser. Yay! It like works on phone, tablet, PC, Mac. Works for everybody, so it's great. Hashtag shout out to Lindy for like showing me how to use it, because I was so confused when I first tried to like make a meeting on there. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, I've been hosting like random study sessions since March. Basically, I just like wanted to connect people during quarantine and like the whole stay-at-home orders and stuff, because now we're like all alone in our homes, and I was like, why don't we study together? So yeah, if you're interested in joining like a random study session with me and other people that are studying languages, follow me on Instagram. I post about them and like you can connect with people and we can just talk about studying languages, and yeah, it's really fun. So follow me on Instagram if you want to be a part of that. How do you balance out various resources while also not using too many and not losing track of everything? So this is a really, really good question, and I'd never thought about it until you asked this, so thank you for asking this. But I think the answer to your question really depends on how much time you have available to you to spend learning languages. So if you are a student who's on summer vacation, you have so much time, right? Hypothetically, you have so much time that you could be spending on like learning languages, so you can use more resources because you can put in a good amount of time into each of them. But if you are someone who's working full-time like myself, and perhaps you have a like other family obligations that you need to attend to, maybe you only have 1 hour or 2 hours available to you to study languages. In that case, I would say only use 1 or 2 resources, because the amount of time you have available to put in is just less than others. So I would say have your main resource, which is the one that you really focus on, and then a supplementary resource that like you use to switch it up when you get tired of your main resource. Basically, in my opinion, it's all about determining how much time you have available to you and identifying where that time is best spent. Because 15 minutes in one book, and then 15 minutes in another book, and then 15 minutes on Memrise, and then 15 minutes with ABC resource isn't gonna help you get very far very fast, as opposed to if you were to just spend all that time with one resource. Before this video gets too long, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off here. You guys had a lot of great questions that I know I didn't even answer today, so there will be a part 2. So if your question wasn't addressed here, now, today, in this video, please keep a lookout for that part 2 video. Yes. I did see a lot of questions about speaking, so I'm going to link you guys to this video right here where I talk about how to practice your speaking when you're shy. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. So tell me bye, you guys. Bye!